Hey, yo, what's going on, you guys? We had a brand new season of Marvel Snap on Tuesday. We do have Data Mind Herbie being the brand new Series 5 card on that day. So we're going to break down some key synergies, the good, the bad, 3 decks for you guys, all about Herbie today. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. In case you guys did not know, Herbie is the brand new Series 5 card that is a 2-cost, 3-power card with the ability... Each turn this is in play, swap to a new activate ability until one is used. It's kind of like Nico, but an on-the-board activate Nico, whereas Nico has the on-reveal spells in hand that changes every single turn. You'll have this on the board and the opportunity to activate Herbie to use said abilities. Which, by the way, there are 4 different ones of those, which is 1, activate next turn, you get +2 energy, which is pretty solid. Of course, you have to wait for potentially this. It's a 1 out of 4 for each ability. So unlike Jennifer Kale, you activate it automatically next turn. After you've activated it, the following turn, you get +1 max energy of the next turn. This gives you +2 energy of the next turn. The next one we have is activate. Give 2 of your cards at each other location +1 power. So it does not give cards at Herbie's location +1 power, but it gives 2 cards at other locations +1 power. Next, we do have activate, create a rock, set its power to 4, which is really interesting. If it goes kind of like the way Mole Man's kind of data mine, I think he is like a banish the top 2 cards or top 1 card in your deck and add 2 rocks to your hand with set to their power, which is very interesting. But this is a potential good token synergy here, or you just get 4 power onto the board. And then the next one we do have is going to be activate double this card's power, which is going to double Herbie's power. So Herbie becomes an activate 2/6 at that point. If you've buffed him, then he doubles it there. And that's going to be the gist of the Herbie abilities. But let's talk about some key synergies for this card. Of course, we are starting off with She-Hulk. I'm starting with She-Hulk because the activate get +2 energy next turn. You can use for some She-Hulk value. A lot of the synergies today are going to be like specific to whichever activate works well for him. We have Sebastian Shaw. This could also be Captain Carter. Just a surfer-style list, getting extra energy, getting an extra power to 2 cards on each other location is really solid. Doubling Herbie's power, maybe not as much, but if you've hit him with a, Galacta, maybe he goes to a 2/10, which I think is pretty solid. And then, of course, Blue Marvel, I'm thinking about Zoo. I'm thinking about adding the rock to the board. I'm thinking about also adding power to cards at other locations, kind of like a Marvel Boy, but it's not just specific to 1-drops. Doubling Herbie's power as well. I'm thinking of just stuff like that, having extra energy. Like, I think in Zoo, it could be actually pretty solid there. But let's go ahead and talk about the counters as well. All right, so there's not really a lot of counters, I would say, for this card just yet, because, like, his ability with it being activate, there's only a Red Guardian or even, like, a Lady Deathstrike to turn this card off. Besides that, we do have Shadow King as one of the other cards that you can be affected by here. But like even with Shadow King, it has to be like onto Herbie or the cards that got +1 power. So it's very interesting into this kind of like situation. Until we have a Dynamite card out in September, I do believe, that kind of steals an activate ability from the opponent's card, kind of like a rogue, and like, takes it. I think right now these are the only like true, like just deliberate counters to Herbie itself, because, he's kind of an activate, kind of can just do its own thing. And it's kind of a new utility kind of activate card itself too, so like it's weird, kind of like not necessarily narrow, maybe it is narrow to like the cards that actually can like affect Herbie itself. But let's talk about the good and the bad for this card as well. So starting off with the good, we do, of course, there's not a lot of counters to this card, so that is a benefit. There's not a lot of ways to counter this card, which really makes this card better in that sense. It's an activate ability that you can kind of wait for until you get the right activate ability. You don't have to do it just that turn specifically, so there is the kind of hold and wait until you have some build up to be able to actually use this ability. It's a 2-cost activate too, so it's a bit better to use than some of the other more expensive activates itself. It's a little bit less predictable in that sense as well, because I don't think your opponent knows until the next turn what Herbie turns into, is kind of what I'm assuming. Kind of like with Nico, it kind of happens when it's on the board then and there, opposed to you having the notification of your opponent knowing necessarily. We'll see how it looks in the dev video whenever they release the dev video. But I think that helps kind of you get some better value with this card later in the game as long as it's on the board. And then, of course, 2 out of 3 of the abilities have potential to be really strong, whether it's giving 2 cards at each other location plus 1 power, getting plus 2 energy on the next turn. Doubling Herbie's power is pretty good. The rock one, I think, is like probably one of the weaker abilities, but I think you can get value in some certain situations opposed to the other 2 to 3 being pretty good overall. Now, the bad for this card, it's an activate, so you can't use this card's ability the same exact turn you play it. Also, depending on when you play the card, you may not get one of the activate abilities that'll actually be beneficial to you. But I still kind of like waver that, like, you may get the rock. The rock might be the one that's not beneficial, or the max, not max energy, but like the extra 2 energy on the next turn. Isn't that great? But getting the extra power onto one of your cards, 2 of your cards on each location, still good. Doubling this card's power, still pretty good. And then, Red Guardian is creeping his way back up into the meta. You're starting to see him more and more, even after the change to the OTA, when he went from a 3-3 to a 3-2. But it's still a really solid tech card. I wouldn't be surprised if this next week, especially also with Mr. Fantastic First Steps being released, you do see some more Red Guardian. It's probably going to be a Red Guardian heavy week. And then it's a bad late card draw. You draw this at the end of the game, it's just a 2-3. You don't get to use their activate at all. It's just there. So just keep that in mind. But let's go ahead and move into the floor and the ceiling for this card. All right, so when we talk about the floor and the ceiling for this card, at the low end, the floor of this card, it is a late draw or play it out and you have no usage for the activate ability. That is the worst thing that can happen for Herbie. The best thing that can happen, you play this out on curb or later in the game and you get the activate ability to work for you. You have an ability with activate that generally benefits you or just, is actually solid for what you got going on. And I think that's the floor of the ceiling. I think there's a pretty high ceiling for this card, and I think you're going to get value from this card pretty much every game. Of course, if you get the rock every single game, it may be not, depending on if it's not benefiting you. But if you're not filling the board, getting an extra 4 power in that lane, I think is pretty decent, All right, the first deck we have is a high Evo assisted Sheena. I'm really playing into the Herbie giving extra energy situation here to be able to get that sort of value for these cards in general, which, Jennifer Kale gives you +1 max energy, right? So you could just do a float into Jennifer Kale to, Infinite on turn 5. But with Herbie, if you do get the right activate with Herbie, you can play Infinite on turn 6 and then set up for She-Hulk, regular Hulk stuff, which is something I'm thinking about as well, which I think can honestly go really well with this card in general. I think there's a variety of different ways you can mess around with. I think it's a bit cope, probably. But I wanted to see if there's a way you can get this kind of high Evo shell back on track. You have Cosmo to protect some of your bigger cards. You have your own Shang-Chi for some counterattack. You have She-Hulk, Infinite Hulk for all sorts of different ways to get value. If it is even just a Jennifer Kale into She-Hulk Infinite on turn 6. It just really depends on card draw and everything too. Maybe there's a world you have Magic in this list. But I think, Herbie could be actually interested in this type of shell, just having that extra energy kind of to mess around with. But we'll see how it happens. Moving on to the next list, though. I like this list a lot. So there is a world. I was talking to Roram and Cougar because Cougar is the one I believe that made this discard surfer list, and we're playing into that. In the sense, also, Herbie giving +1 power to a Dakin, to a Captain Carter, or pretty much most of these cards on the board is really beneficial for you. Getting the extra energy to be able to play 2 3-drops and potentially Grandmaster and stuff out is going to be interesting. Or even Surge, it's a 3-drop. You can play potentially 3 cost cards on the same turn, which is actually really solid here too. Herbie adding a rock to the board is probably your least likely activate ability you want here. But doubling Herbie's power if that got hit by a Galacta even, or even a Surge, or even adding the extra energy or the extra power to cards across the board, I think is really beneficial. It allows you to kind of have different combo pieces, which I like a lot, and kind of spread power out horizontally, which is what you're normally trying to do with Surfer. But I feel like this list is going to be really fun. I think this might be what I try and hit Infinite with, some sort of version of this. But very excited for something like this style of Herbie, and I think you get to utilize all sorts of different aspects of the card, which is really cool. Next, we do have the Zoo deck, which we were talking about Blue Marvel with Zoo. We have Mr. Fantastic in this list, too, which is the first step's Mr. Fantastic, which is end of turn, give a card in your hand -1 cost or +1 power, which can be pretty strong. And I think that's something we got to keep in mind here. You also have Herbie to go along with adding extra power across the board or giving you extra energy to be able to do more combo pieces. Also adding a rock in this sense gives you Mockingbird value, and it is a potential Zoo card because it gets affected by Khazar. It does also get affected by Marvel Boy, so you have some really good options there. As my cat is approaching me, you probably heard him in the background. But I think this is another just good kind of space for Herbie to be. We'll see how this kind of envelops because, Killmonger is still very popular right now with Clea coming out this last week. And with Dormammu, you're playing Killmonger to counter a lot of this kind of stuff going on. So we'll see how Zoo holds up. But let's talk about my final verdict for this card. All right, so looking at these rankings, before we do go over to the final verdict, I do think this card is going to be strong, especially at a 2 cost for what it can do. Yes, it is activate, which is something you do need to keep in mind, but these activate abilities, I think, are really incredible and allows you to have all sorts of different flexibility and utility when it comes to a 2 cost card as is. I think this card has potential to be adjusted depending if it is too strong. I think if they do adjust anything, they would adjust probably giving 2 cards at each other location +1, and they'd make it 1 card at each other location +1 if that's too strong. But overall, I don't think this card is busted. I think it's going to be a pretty solid card, and it's going to be pretty strong, which is why I'm saying you guys should buy this card. I think this card is going to especially have a good impact on the meta. I think for this long majority of the season too, and going into potentially other seasons, I think this card is going to be solid, so I would spend resources to get this card. I say that while also noting that, your resources, guys, are for you to spend the way you want to spend them. Play the game you want to play. You can listen to other people, you can listen to me, you can listen to other people theorize and yap and talk about how this card is going to be amazing, and then this card completely flops. But at the end of the day, I would still wait a couple days before spending your resources just so you have a true, thorough idea of what the card can do and what list it is very, flexible or it fits well in, so you can really optimize how you use those resources since they are so limited. Because, cards do work as believed, and sometimes they don't. We are theory crafting. We don't have hands-on testing with these cards yet. We haven't seen, the dev video yet either, so we don't know for certain if this is how this card is going to interact the way it does. We are theory crafting based off of what we have data mined on Snap.fan, so just keep that in mind too. But I do think this is going to be a good card in general, so if you guys do get the card, I think you guys are going to like the card anyways. But of course, just keep in mind, activate. It's an activate. It's not on reveal. But yeah, I want to say thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you guys did stick around to the very end, let me know down below, what are you guys thinking about the new season in general? Do you think you guys are going to continue to be playing Snap? Do you think you're going to get the season pass? Do you think you're going to get the super premium season pass where they're actually putting another card behind that? So it's $20 for 2 cards now, which that's US dollars too, by the way. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that shapes up and what the meta looks like now. Will everyone be getting super premium passes? Will people only get the regular? Will people just be skipping the entire season? Who knows? But I do want to say, once again, thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. That's all free for you to do. And God bless. It's been real. Tucker out.